Leavesden Mental Hospital was designed under the instruction by the Board of Management of the Metropolitan Asylums Board in the year of 1867. The following Act for the regulation and care of treatment of lunatics was made by Anthony Ashley Cooper, who was appointed in 1845 by the government. Although the idea was intended for an innocent reason, some of the experiments and treatments they had performed inside Leavesden could be considered inhumane and sickening. These treatments consisted of electrotherapy, insulin therapy, and cold water immersion therapy.
They didn't really know what they were doing, but they were doing the best they can.
There were thousands of patients and also hundreds of staff to keep this huge-scale asylum up and running. A small minority that worked there, who are still alive today, still have distressing memories and stories that they are too scared to reveal and share. This is the true history and events of Leavesden Mental Hospital.
One of the things with a unique place like that is when they opened it in October of 1870, it had 1,969 patients who were called inmates at the time, and that's actually how they were referred, was inmates. And they had about 240 staff members. So here was this facility back in 1870 just opening up with over 2,300 people. And they were all self-contained. They had 2,300 people. They made their own mattresses, their own clothing, their own shoes. They had 42 acres that they harvested to feed themselves and everything. In fact, the only thing I can find that they really brought in, through the historical records, was coal, lemonade, and sugar. And the gentleman that was taking care of and flour too. And the gentleman that was taking care of all that, he would reject anything if it wasn't of good quality. So it was an amazing feat for people to be able to, 3 miles north of Watford, back in the 1870s, where everything was still being brought in by horse and cart. It was amazing that they could actually have that many people on that site. And then as it got bigger into the 1930s and 40s, in 1932 when they took over the old orphanage, which was across the road, they had anywhere from 3,500 patients and 1,700 staff. They had like 4,500 people working there. By then it was covering an area of 187 acres on the north and south side of what is now College Road.
Only after a few years after opening, England declared 2 world wars in Germany in 1914 to 1919 and 1939 to 1945. This meant they had to use the hospital for respite and care. They converted the chapel into 2 more rooms suitable for the injured soldiers. However, only a few miles away from the mental hospital, the Canadians moved over to set up a new hospital called the Canadian Hospital. They used this hospital until World War II finished in 1945. However, they converted the buildings into more care homes for the elderly.
Places like Leavesden Hospital, especially Leavesden Hospital, were used quite a bit in World War I and World War II. In World War I, the first post office rifles were billeted there, and this was a very large part of the infantry that went to fight in World War I. They came from all over the UK, Liverpool, Manchester, and were shipped down here to Leavesden. They trained in Leavesden because, again, 84 acres, there was a lot of acreage for them to train in. It was a big hospital facility, so obviously there was a lot of places for them to stay, so they billeted a lot of people there. And they trained in St. Lawrence, trained and prayed in St. Lawrence Church in Abbots Langley, and there's a dedication plaque in the St. Lawrence Church in memory of the people from post office rifles that served. There was a lot of individuals. There's a friend of mine who is a historian who's working on collecting all the names of everybody that worked at the hospital or lived in Abbots Langley that went to World War I and World War II and did or didn't come back.
Due to them having so many old people and also deaths due to a small minority of failed operations, the committee in the hospital decided to have cemeteries dotted all over the land they owned. Now local residents who are aware about the hospital and the history of the hospital think that the condition of the cemetery now is shocking and in some respects disrespectful.
Now there was a rumor, there was kind of a story, one of these nice little stories and everything you hear, about a possible mass grave somewhere. There's always been a rumor there's a mass grave up in the hospital. So I was doing some research with the archives in Hertfordshire County. I couldn't find what I wanted, but they said, we have this stuff on Leavesden Hospital Cemetery. I said, I'll take a look at that. And this dates back to 1896 and everything when they requested the land. And so I was looking through all this, and they did. And it's very odd that they would have requested extra cemetery space and then only 6 years later closed that and went across the street. I also noticed written in the margin that they were requesting a certain sum of money to investigate the condition of the water from the wells. They were also requesting additional monies to investigate a fever outbreak. Well, rumor has it, the story always was that they used to pump all the sewage from the hospital down to the sewage treatment plant, which was right next to the very first cemetery. Once they separated all the sewage and everything and treated it, they'd pump it out into the fields for fertilizer. Well, it's all chalk based in England, is very popular, it's all chalk. So that all that excrement leaked through into the water system, which was pumped back up to the hospital and allegedly caused a cholera epidemic. So we had stories anywhere from 500 to 5,000 people dying in the hospital in one go, hence the need for a mass grave.
After a few years from closing in the year of 1995, the hospital remained empty and derelict until 2001. This is when Demand, a wonderful charity who make things that are not invented yet for children who have some form of a disability.
Well, Demand is a small charity. It was set up in 1980, and its aim is to design and make one-off items of equipment for disabled people where they can't find a solution to their problem off the shelf. I've been working here for 23 years, and we used to be in East London, and then we moved to Knapsbury in London Colney, and then we moved to this building.
It's amazing to truly think that these three buildings are still standing here today, from when they were being designed in 1861 to 1886, and now to 2015. They're now merely just two sets of flats and a chapel. They've managed to withstand 2 world wars, staff, and thousands of patients. Now, we have only one chapel left, called Demand, which they're doing a lovely thing to do. Not much to say here, apart from truly remarkable.